When I say great, 11 years in the NFL and 3 years with the USFL, Philadelphia, and then Baltimore Stars. Irv, great to talk to you today.
Great. Hey, Mike, great to talk to you as well. Thank you.
So tell me why you chose the USFL over the NFL, because the Kansas City Chiefs actually drafted you.
Yeah. Well, they actually, the draft that year was after the USFL started. So at the point I chose to go to the USFL, the NFL draft hadn't taken place yet, but they did draft me, I think, basically to hold my rights in anticipation of the league folding, which, of course, it did. But for me, it was a matter of having a chance to do something that had been tried before, of course, with the WFL and the and all of that, previous leagues, years in years past. But I felt like it was the time of year was very appealing, playing in the spring. Of course, I knew where I would be going, Philadelphia, so the city itself was very attractive to me. And, I felt like if it worked, it would be something new and exciting. And if it didn't, I felt like I could always go back and do what I originally was going to do, which is play in the NFL.
Well, it certainly was exciting if you were a Philadelphia Star. You guys went to 3 straight USFL championships, winning the last 2 under head coach Jim Mora. You had some incredible players on that team. On defense, you had William Fuller and Sam Mills, and on the offense, you had Kelvin Bryant, yourself on the O-line with Bart Oates as well. And when I remember talking to Carl Peterson, he said we didn't have the real star, like the superstar, like say an Anthony Carter or Herschel Walker, but we were probably the best. We were the best team as far as working as a unit, as a team.
I think that's true, but honestly, in my opinion, I'm a little biased. But I think we had the single best player in the USFL, which is Kelvin Bryant. Like I said, he was my roommate. He was a friend of mine. I was a teammate, but I think he was definitely the best individual player in the USFL, and he went on to have a successful career in the NFL as well with the Redskins. But I think that's basically true. I think we had a group of guys who individually, for the most part, wouldn't be considered superstars. I think we had a great group of guys that worked hard. I remember our defense actually ended up lovingly being called the doghouse defense.
The doghouse defense, that's right.
Yeah, but they got in the doghouse with Coach Moore because we had a couple of bad outings. But after that, they were the most dominant defense in the USFL. And guys like Sam Mills, rest his soul, one of the best players I've ever been around. Period. No asterisk whatsoever. And one of the worst guys ever to practice against. I think I tried for 3 years straight to knock Sam down. I succeeded 0 times, I think.
Yeah, and talk about it. And the USFL gave an opportunity for veterans because Mills, as I recall, he was cut by the Browns and then had the opportunity to come in the USFL. And I remember Jim Morris saying when he went to the NFL with the Saints, he was kind of kicking himself at first. This guy's too short. He'll never make it. He was being ridiculed by his comrades in the coaching ranks, taking a chance on this guy. And boy, what an impact Sam Mills had on the NFL.
Yeah, well, the guy who was too little and couldn't play has a statue outside of the Panther Stadium down in Carolina right now. And so, I think he proved to himself that he more than belonged. No, it was just a simple matter, which so happens so many times in the NFL. A guy doesn't fit the mold, and then everything else is just assumed. I mean, Sam was a great player, but of course he wasn't the right height and he wasn't the right size, so therefore he couldn't play. And I think that he was a perfect example of a guy that, given a chance, you can't measure the size of a guy's heart. And nobody had a bigger heart than Sam.
Yeah, I don't understand that. A guy that eventually does make it in the NFL. What was it that coaches couldn't see out of Sam Mills that they couldn't give him a shot, and he became such an incredible player years later?
Well, I think the NFL, probably worse than any sports league, has always fallen in love with numbers. Well, every linebacker has to be 6'1" and blah blah blah, and every running back and every quarterback. They just sometimes they fail to actually look at the guy doing what he's asked to do, which is actually play the game. I mean, that's why you see so many draft picks blown year after year. Oh, the guy is 6'5", he's 230, and he can throw the ball, 80 yards, blah, 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 but he can't play the game. So it's like, people, because numbers are easy to hide behind. So that's why everybody says, hey, this guy's the right height, he runs a 4.4, and he's this, and so on and so forth. So it's easy to say, okay, this guy should make it because everybody recognizes numbers. But all you got to do is look at a guy play the game, and Sam could always play the game. So I don't know. I think it's an easy out for people to say, oh, okay, he's not the right size. And you see it every year. People blow draft picks all the time, missing on guys who don't fit the mold.
Listen, I'm a Jets fan for 40 years. You don't have to tell me. Yeah, that's why I
Well,
love
I'm not
the.
gonna, as a former Jet at one time, I'm not touching that one. I'm not.
Well, let me just tell you, I was at the games in '91 and '92, and I want to stay on Sam Mills for a little bit, but how come Browning Nagel never made it? I never understood it.
I'm sorry, say it again.
How come Browning Nagel never made it? Why did the Jets steer so quickly away from getting from Browning Nagel?
Well, honestly, and I love Brown as a teammate, but I think that when he was at, I believe, Louisville, I think that it was a situation where the system was kind of molded to Browning, and I think when he got in the NFL, where everything just kind of sped up, which happens with a lot of players, I think he was never able to kind of keep up with the pace of the NFL, which is true for a lot of guys. I mean, you don't have everything you had time to take your time to do in college. In the NFL, you just, with the speed and athleticism and the complexity of the systems, it's hard to, you can't get away with that in the NFL. Yeah, I'll tell you a funny Browning Nagel story. That one time, we were 4-0 in the preseason.
No, you guys were actually 5-0. That's why when people talk to me about the preseason,
right.
I say 1992 New York Jets 5-0, finish 4-12.
Right. So we go into the first game of the year. Browning's under center, or he thinks he's under center. He comes on. He goes under center, and he starts altering to a Louisville play. And literally, you can see on camera, all 5 linemen turn around and looked at him like, "What the?"
Well, he fumbled for the opening snap, did he not? In the Atlanta game, he fumbled the opening snap.
Well, I don't know if he didn't fumble it because the funniest thing, we all looked at him like, "Brown, what the hell are you saying?" And it's right in the middle of the game. Brown said, "Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry."
Oh man, it was all downhill after that.
Almost fell on my face, but yeah, oh wow. But he's a great kid, though. Great kid.
So let's talk about Sam Mills. Certainly, I mean, he was literally the heart and soul of that Saints defense that Jim Moore turned around, and he brought all those USFL players in there. Tell me a Sam Mills story. Tell me about Sam Mills, the person he was.
Well, you know what I think what a lot of people don't know about Sam, because he was such a serious football player, and took the game so seriously. But as a teammate, the guy was a clown. I'll tell you about Sam Mills, and I'll tell you a story about him in death that tells you how he was in life. When Sam passed away, obviously it was tragic, and I went to his funeral along with Carl Peters and a few of the people from the Chiefs organization. And so, of course we're sad that Sam's gone. So we sit down at the funeral, and the guy gets up there and he started reading a letter from Sam. All right. I'm laughing because it was funny, because Sam meant for it to be funny. And he's sitting there and he's telling everybody, don't be sitting there all long-faced, got all the chickens and collard greens downstairs with macaroni and cheese. I wish I was there to get it. So you guys better not, don't be wasting time up here, crying about this, because if I was here, I'd be the first one in line. And it just, and you're sitting there and you're thinking in this solemn situation, but that's the way he was. He was a guy that on one hand took his job very seriously, but didn't take himself too seriously. And that was the beauty of Sam. I mean, really, I never met a greater man than Sam. And I think that's why, he has a statue outside of, Carolina Stadium right now, because he impacted everybody that he was around. He was a beautiful man. I mean, he really was. He just was a great guy. He was gone too soon, but I think he made every day count when he was here.
Absolutely. He affected people he didn't even know. Let's talk about your team. Great defense, and wow, you play great defense, you run the ball, you win championships. What a novel concept, and you guys pretty much really did that. And I remember talking to Bart Oates. He said he felt at the time by the third season, you guys could have beaten the Philadelphia Eagles at the time. How do you feel about that?
Well, I certainly think there was probably 4 or 5, maybe. I would say the bottom third of the NFL, we could have certainly beaten some of them, and certainly challenged some of them. And that's not egotistical. That just means we had such a well-oiled machine, and we were physical, and we've made very few mistakes in terms of turnovers and that type of thing. Our defense just knocked the crap out of people. Yeah, I mean, and football is football. At some point, we were the same guys that will ultimately be playing against some of these guys. So I don't disagree with that at all. I agree with Bart 100%.
And talk about that playoff game against Chicago. The Blitz had a big lead on you guys, and you guys were able to come back. Talk about that playoff game.
Well, I remember that. It was, I think we were down, I don't know, I think 3 touchdowns, I believe. And it started to rain. And as a matter of fact, I'll never forget, there's a highlight film. At that moment, it played the song "It's Raining Men" by the Weather Girls or whatever, I think it was. But anyway, it started to rain, and as soon as it started to rain, the defense started to knock the ball out. We started to capitalize on turnovers. The next thing you know, I mean, we pull off this big victory, and, it was just amazing. I'll never forget that day. It was one of the most exciting games I've been a part of because they were so sure they had that game won. I mean,
and that Blitz team was led by George Allen, of course, the former Redskins coach, and the fans really started to embrace you from there. Talk about the fans' support in Philadelphia. You didn't have as many fans as say they had in Tampa Bay or Jacksonville, but it was kind of like what hockey is. You had a strong 18,000 fans supporting you.
Well, I'll tell you what, they Philly fans. I mean, if you win, they love you.
They would, yeah.
And we won, and they supported us. And that's the biggest regret. I think if we had a couple more seasons to play and show our product, I think we really could have been successful. But the fans there, we could never argue about how the support they showed us. I mean, I can't remember what our overall average was. I think it was the low 20s or whatever. But I know they made it. Every one of them made you know that they were there, and they were loud as heck. And it would sound like the entire stadium was full in the vet, which of course was one of the worst stadiums in history. but nevertheless, I mean, they rocked that place, and we could never complain about about the overall support there.
They say about the old vet, if you can't find a urinal, you can always use a water fountain, right?
Oh my God! Don't remind me. The field conditions were just unbelievable. But hey, you know what? It was home, and we played at Franklin Field for a while. So I think the whole experience to me made me appreciate even once you start getting paid to play the game, how simple the game really is. It really just comes down to playing the game and being around guys and playing with guys that you care about and that you have a common goal with. And it really is not as complicated as people make it. It's really just about that camaraderie and trying to reach a common goal.
And that common goal culminated in appearing in the first USFL Championship in Denver. I was talking to Bobby Hebert, and he says, boy, what a scene it was. They had over 50,000 fans, and it was an exciting game. What do you recall about that experience and going onto the field?
Well, I remember, just running out there and being surprised that there was that many people. I mean, let's face it, we're playing in the city that neither teams are from, so you never know what you're going to get, right? So we run out there, and the place is rocking, it's full of people, and lots of fans on both sides. And of course, I remember how we lost the game. It was an out route to Anthony Carter, and one of our guys missed a tackle, and he turns up the sidelines, and nobody's going to catch AC once he's gone. He runs it in, time expires, and I tell you what, after that game, right after that play on the field, we promised each other that next year was ours, and we felt like we let that one get away, and we promised each other that the next trophy was ours, and obviously the next 2 were. So.
What's it like losing a championship game like that? What's it like in the locker room afterwards? I mean, and you guys were able to recover. We see teams when they lose a Super Bowl now have a hard time getting back. We see the struggles Atlanta's had since they lost. They're not the team they were last year. You made a resolution to say we're going to go back to the Super Bowl, but the USFL Championship. But how hard is it once to really rebound in the moments after a loss like that?
Well, I think it's all how you approach it. I mean, if you spend time dwelling on the loss, but we didn't. From that night on, we started dwelling on the next season, because that was done, and we just literally, right after the game, we said, okay, the next one's ours. So we know, obviously, we had let it get away from us, and we felt like we didn't get beat. That nothing against them, but we felt like we had let it get away from us, and so we started to focus on the next season. Forget about that. This is gone. Forget about it. After the night, we're done with it, and that's pretty much how we approach it. Now, some teams, they sit there and they wallow in what could have been, after the game's over, the score still's not going to change, and you're still thinking about that in training camp and spring training and all of that. And before you know it, it's eating into your season. You're still thinking about last year. So we didn't allow that to happen to us. I think this was key to us being successful for 2 following seasons.
Well, the following season, if you were going to do it, you were going to have to get past a New Jersey Generals team that was spending a lot of money. Guys like Bobby Leopold came from the NFL, Gary Barbaro, Brian Sipe. The Generals really reloaded. They brought Walt Michaels in to coach the team, and the Donald Trump was spending money. So they were your real rivalry there. The Stars and the Generals were a real USFL rivalry.
We own them. I mean, they.
All right, you beat them all the time. Okay, get off my back.
I mean, it was a rivalry on paper, but let's face it, we own them. I mean, all that money they spent, we still beat them down. I mean, it's just like, because I'm telling you, they went out and tried to manufacture a team, and we had a team. It was that simple. I mean, they went out second year, tried to load up and get all these guys. We had a bunch of guys that had been through the grind. I mean, everything from the first training camp down in the land, Florida, planting these flooded fields in the spring and all of that. And we had already had meshed as a team, and we weren't going to be denied. And they were trying to buy their way through it, and it just wasn't going to work.
How much did the defense get up when they knew they were going to face Herschel Walker?
Well, I think that I think they definitely took it up a notch, because I don't remember exactly, but I think if you look at it statistically, honestly, Herschel never had a good game against us that I can recall, because our defense was amazing, and I think with the better the player they played against, the more they got up for it. I mean, Sam and guys like George Cooper and Antonio Gibson. I mean, those guys. I mean, they were unbelievable. I'm glad we were playing with them instead of against them. That's for sure.
You guys, in the second season, you take care of the Generals at Franklin Field, like you talked about earlier. What a great place to watch a game that was, or play a game, I'm sure. And you go back to the USFL Championship, and you take care of George Allen this time in the playoffs. The championship was in Tampa Bay, and you beat him 23-3, and you really owned it this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the result that we expected the first time in. No disrespect to to Michigan. They won the game. But, I mean, we felt like, honestly, that we should have won all three. And when we had a second chance, there was no way that we were going to leave any doubt the second time around. I mean, we felt like that we left one on the table, and we were definitely not going to miss out. When we played played against the Wranglers out in down in Tampa. So it was fun. It was. I mean, to me, it was the most fun period I had playing my whole career, pro career. Honestly, those 3 years. It was only.
Yeah, that's what I hear from a lot of players. I mean, they love playing in the USFL, and it's during this time, during that second season, you started to hear the rumors about moving to the fall. What was the initial thought process among the players about moving to the fall? Because I know so many people, so many players love what they were doing in the USFL.
Well, I thought it was the dumbest idea ever. I mean, you were going against, I think at the time, against an almost 75-year entity that had the fall locked down. Let's be realistic. And they had it locked down. And that's not why we came into existence. We came into existence to fill a void in the spring, whereas, early baseball and golf. So the whole point was to fill a void in the spring. Here we are, less than 3 years into the thing. We're talking about going head to head. Head to head how? With what? I mean, what? It was ridiculous. I mean, it was a ridiculous concept, and I can't believe that the owner allowed himself to be talked into that. And it was disappointing to us because we felt like we had the perfect niche, and we felt like we just had more time. Because I don't think anybody would ever say that it wasn't good quality, entertaining football. Not relative to anybody else, just good quality football that you cannot get in the spring because there was no spring football. And so I think that when they tried to move it, obviously it was death knell business-wise. I just think it was a stupid idea to begin with.
And it certainly led to the doom of the USFL trying to go to that fall league. And, you find out that their contracts were in place with ESPN and ABC worth $250 million. Why would you throw that away? $250 million worth of TV contracts, and the USFL owners really basically just threw it away at the time. What was your own? You had a great ownership in Mr. Tannenbaum. What was he telling the players, and how were things being relayed to the players from the ownership?
Well, honestly, we weren't told a lot. I mean, we got our information from guys like you. We wasn't like we were kept abreast or anything or whatever. I mean, it just you just kind of like you sitting there with obviously your future in jeopardy, not knowing whether you're going to have a league or whatever. And then of course, over time, some guys were a little bit in limbo, like basically thinking, well, if I'm not going to be able to play in the USFL, we're not going to continue. Then I need to make a move to the NFL or whatever, and so I can continue my career. And personally, like myself, I had to sit out a whole extra season after we suspended play after the third season. I wasn't able to get in to that fall season with the NFL because I was still technically under contract, and I was one of the few guys where they still held my contract and wouldn't release me. So I missed that first NFL season that I could have played.
So moving to 1985, obviously the announcement to go to the Fall League, and that cost you guys access rights to Vet Stadium. Deal couldn't be worked out to go to Franklin Field, and you guys wind up playing at the University of Maryland. That had to be very odd, very draining. You guys struggled throughout the season, but towards the end, you really, really turned it on. Talk about how Coach Jim Mora, kept the team together during that time.
Yeah, we did struggle early on. I think we ended up initially being 2-3 or something like that within the first 5 games or something like that. And we just kind of, of course, Jim was always, he was steady. He didn't have a lot of ebbs and flows. But I think as it came to the point during the season where we just got together as a team and decided, I don't know what we're doing here, but, we're the champs, and I don't care where we play. This is our league. We own this league. And we just kind of basically refocused ourselves, came out, and for the last, I think we went 11 out of the last 12 or 10 out of the last 11 or something like that. I know we ended up winning 13 games. And, it was just kind of like we just decided, you know what, I don't know who this is. It's masquerading as us, but this is not us. And we just kind of refocused and regained our footing and kind of ran through the season after that.
And then you played, of course, in the playoffs, the New Jersey Generals once again, and well, they didn't have Doug Flutie, so you guys got lucky. And you beat them. You beat the Generals in the Meadowlands. I was there. It was a night game, and you took care of business against the Generals once again. And certainly once you got past the Generals, you probably thought there was no way anything was going to stop you.
Yeah, well, like I said, we weren't arrogant about it. But we felt like we were the superior team in the league. And we felt like we honestly, and Coach Moore had a lot to do with it, every game we went out, we felt like we should win that game. And I don't mean hope we win it. We felt like we should win it. And honestly, when we started out with the subpar record at the beginning of the season, we were actually in shock for a while. I mean, I know I was, because we couldn't understand it because we'd never been in that position before. We won 16 games the first year and 19 games the second year. So we were a little confused about why we were allowing that to happen. So we were able to right the ship at the end and win the championship again.
And you guys, like we talked about earlier, great defense, and you're able to run the ball. And we see what the NFL is, and we see a lot of colleges all pass, and you see the Big 12, so much passing going on. It seems like nobody knows how to run block anymore. And talk about the mentality that you can break the will of a defense by running the ball, which is different from pass protection. Talk about that mentality and that difference.
Well, yeah, I think you just said it too. It is a mentality. I hear a lot of times in the NFL, you see guys halfway through a game, oh, we're going to start running the ball. Well, it doesn't work that way. You have to run the ball. You have to have a mentality of running the ball. You have to be willing to live with sometimes, oh, that's a 2-yard gain, that's a 3-yard gain. If you're gonna abandon it every time, you don't gain 5 or 10 yards, then that's not the mentality. The mentality is that eventually, maybe 2 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, but eventually it's going to turn into 10 and 12 and 15, and then you break a long one. And you're right, it does wear a defense down. They'd much rather be pass rushing than have you leaning on them all day long. And but we stayed dedicated to it. We never deviated from that because we knew that's the formula we needed to win. And I think that if you don't see many teams that throw the ball predominantly and have much success. The Chargers tried it forever, with Dan Fouts and all that. And you have some success, But ultimately, you're going to have to run the ball, whether you are, even if you're ahead, you're still going to have to run the ball, keep the ball away from the other offense.
Well,
And you
yeah,
don't,
yeah. The Cowboys in the '90s, they passed the ball, and then Emmitt Smith basically wore down the defense.
right, right. You don't just turn that on. Oh, you know what? We're going to run the ball today. No, it doesn't work that way because you guys up front. You as an offensive line, you have to know that there's 4 or 5 running plays that we can execute well against any defense. Doesn't matter who it is. I don't care if it's the '85 Bears or whomever it is. That you have to have, at least a handful of plays that you know that you can execute against anybody.
So going to the last USFL championship, quite a big different scene. Sunny Denver, last game in '85, the championship. It's raining. There's going to be, a change as trying to move to the fall. The trial is going to happen with the NFL. Talk about what you were thinking and what the team was. I mean, did you guys know this is the last time we're going to be together?
Well, we knew it wasn't. It wasn't looking good. To me, the minute that we heard that we were going to try to move to fall, we knew that wasn't good. I mean, nobody. I don't think any player for 1 second thought that was going to win. I mean, we thought that was a joke. So, I think from our standpoint, I know as a team, and I know personally, we just kind of approached it from, okay, you know what? We're just going to enjoy the moment and let the chips fall where they may when this is over. Very well could be the last season. But we're just going to stay in the moment and maximum, and all we can control is where we are right now. And that's kind of how we talk about it. All we can control is where we are, and we can play this game, we can win this game, and however it ends up, this can never be taken away from us. And that's pretty much was our mentality.
And you guys beat the Invaders, who had merged with the Panthers, and their Bobby Hebert was again, and their Anthony Carter was again. But you guys held on, 28-24. Kelvin Bryant, as I recall, was a game MVP, and you talked about him being a great back and everything, and talk about the final minutes of that game because you guys didn't know if you were going to hold on and win that game towards the end.
Well, I mean, I think we were confident. We were confident going in, and we were coming. I mean, we played in a bunch of close games, and it wasn't. Obviously, we've been in the championship 3 years in a row, so there was no nerves or being overly concerned at that time. And again, the Invaders, they're a very good football team, and obviously we had kind of played them before, and they're a good football team. I think next to us, they probably were the second best team in the league. So, but we were confident, and it turned out like we thought it would.
Talk to me about some of the USFL players. Reggie White. What we obviously, like someone like me or the fans, know he was great, but tell us a Reggie White story, or what made him so difficult, and were you surprised he had such an impact on the NFL once he went there?
Well, Reggie, I knew Reggie personally because I tried to recruit Reggie at UCLA when I was there. He came out as a recruit, and obviously he ended up going to University of Tennessee. But Reggie was, aside from being immensely talented, he was also just a workman. I mean, he worked at his craft, and he was just full time all the time. You knew with Reggie, there was no plays off, none of that. And to me, in a funny way, it kind of pushed you as a player because you knew playing against Reggie, don't come in half-stepping or you can get yourself embarrassed. And, he was obviously one of the greatest players in history. But I think the thing I admired about him most as an opponent was his work ethic. People say, well, he had great talent. Well, yeah, that goes without saying. But I think his work ethic. I mean, he took a lot of pride in what he did, and obviously he was a quality man as well. And I think that's what you notice most about Reggie, being around him and playing against him.
Vaughn Johnson. Your thoughts on Vaughn Johnson?
He was a phenomenal. I just remember how athletic he was. He was just seemed like a guy that didn't have any physical flaws. I mean, he could do it all. I mean, he was just, that's what I remember about him. Just incredible. I mean, a guy that was put together physically, athletic, smart, moved well. I mean, he was the complete package.
Keith Millard.
Keith Millard. We had some battles there. Keith was, we used to laugh about it because I coached with Keith in Oakland as a coach. And we laugh about it because Keith was one of those guys, like, he kind of played out of control, wild-eyed, just out of control all the time, talking smack, which is fine by me because I like talking a little smack myself. But, but he was one of those guys that had a full-time motor, and just never let up. I mean, and besides being a talented and skilled player, but he had an incredible motor. That's what I remember about him most, was just the fact that he brought it every play.
Jim Kelly.
Jim Kelly to me was a consummate pro. I mean, he obviously was an unbelievable quarterback, and he did it in college, he did it in the USFL, he did it in the NFL. But just a consummate pro, just an extremely skilled guy that had success at every level. I mean, nothing to argue about. And I knew Jim on a casual level. Great guy. We didn't know each other well, but it seemed like a great guy. But he was just an unbelievable professional, that took his craft very seriously, and it showed. Because he got great results everywhere he went.
Herschel Walker.
Herschel was.
I always get a pause from people when I mention Herschel Walker's name.
Well, he was an unbelievable athlete, an incredible athlete. Different in the sense that the way he talked about himself, using the third person. But incredible athlete. I mean, there's no nick on Herschel, as and I can't profess I knew him personally. We met a few times, but he was an incredible athlete. I mean, fast, big, strong. But honestly, I don't think I remember us preparing to play against him. We never feared him. I never heard our defense. They never feared him. They looked forward to the challenge of playing against him. But he was a phenomenal athlete, one of the best in the history of sports, really.
Are you surprised he didn't have a better NFL career?
No, I don't think so. I think I think, in my opinion, I kind of think the legend of Herschel became even bigger than the man himself. If that makes any sense. What I mean is, sometimes there's a few guys that come down the pike every now and then where it just gets to be, okay, my God, the guy does still have just two legs and all right. He's not, he's not some kind of transformer. I mean, sometimes some of the stories just get to the point like, oh my God, just come on. I mean, the guy's a hell of a player, but come on, let's just come back in this universe. And I think sometimes, and I don't think it's Herschel's fault. I think sometimes, I think it happened with Bo a little bit, and I knew Bo. I knew because I was in Kansas City when he was with the Royals. I mean, guys have such ability that sometimes people just like, oh my God, it's like they take it to a level where it's like, stop it, just come on,
I remember talking to Maurice Carthon when Herschel went to the Cowboys and Carthon was with the Giants in that classic Monday night game in '86, and Herschel Walker knocked down Harry Carson, and Carthon was laughing because he said no one ever did that to Carson before, and Carson went back and said to him, well, why didn't you tell me he could do that? He goes, well, he could bring it when he wants to. And I kind of think that was, from what I hear from people, that's kind of what Herschel was. I mean, he was a great athlete, but maybe he didn't always want to bring it.
Well, I don't think anybody ever, I think like what I did is you respected his speed and size, but I don't think I've ever heard the word used like he ever ran over anybody. Oh my God, he laid the wood on anybody. I don't think anybody ever feared that. I think that he had tremendous, quickness, quick feet. Obviously, he had tremendous size, hard to tackle. But I don't think that, to me, like, this a scarier guy than that who didn't have, I don't think, the same level of cartoonish height was Eric Dickerson. Now to me, that was the scariest guy I've ever seen. One of the scariest guys.
Boy, he could smoke a hole like nobody's business.
Yeah. I mean, you look at a guy who's 6'4" walking around out there, and you thinking he's a wide receiver. Next thing you know, he's lining up the tailback with all that, the goggles and all that. And that big guy was, to me, now he was a scary dude because he did not shy away from. He'd run over you, he'd run by you, shake you, whatever the case might be. So, yeah, but not that one thing has anything to do with the other. But I'm just saying, to me, that was the kind of guy where you're thinking, okay, I can't come up tackling him and messing around because this guy will run over me. But yeah, I just think, like I said, I think when you a guy like Herschel who, and he went to a southern school, and sometimes legends going to South so big, it's like, talk about a guy who might be 6'2", and by the time they get to talking about he's 6'9", 450. Ran a 4 flat. So yeah, so I think he was kind of a victim of his own success, I think.
A couple of your team, William Fuller, went on to have a great career in the NFL, and of course Kelvin Bryant and Gary Clark and Ricky Sanders won. Basically, they helped lead the Washington Redskins to Super Bowl. That trio right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, the last time I saw Kelvin was at Sam's funeral, and he looked the same. Like I said, we were roommates for 3 years in the USFL. Just a great teammate, just a great guy. So it wasn't a surprise to me that he had an integral contribution to success with the Redskins. But those other two guys were great players as well. Didn't know them personally, but great players as well.
Yeah. Well, what made Kelvin so great? So if you could describe Kelvin Bryant, what made him great?
Well, I'll tell you what. You look at him. He was 6'2", 190. Looked like a little wiry drink of water. But I'll tell you what. He had a mentality and the heart of, and if you remember some of his runs, he ran like a linebacker. I mean, in the sense of he didn't shy away from contact. He was tough. He played hurt. He was the type of guy, like maybe if we were having trouble running the ball, he wasn't the kind of guy to come back to huddle and whine and, what's going on, whatever. He just looking out, hey, let's go. Let's go. Give me the ball. I mean, a lot of times I was telling somebody, and I think it sounds like legend, but, we weren't complicated on offense. And we'd go up to the line, and people would say, it's coming right here, And we would look over and say, yeah, it's coming right here. I mean, it's like, it's not, like I remember the touchdown we had against Chicago in the playoff game. It's coming right here. It's coming right here, right over, the guard tackle hole. And we would say, yeah, it is. It's coming right here. What are you going to do? I mean, and that's the mentality he had, and that's the mentality we had. And we have a guy like that ran the way he did. I mean, you want to block a little extra. You just, you're throwing your body because he's not going to just go. He's not going to go down on an arm tackle or initial hit. It's just not going to happen. And I love playing with him. I mean, the guy was a stud.
Tell me about Jim Mora. You had Don Capers on that staff, and any other coaches that had an impact in the NFL. Tell me about Jim Mora.
Well, as far as impact of the coaches, I mean, the entire staff almost. I mean, guys are still coaching, But
yeah, you had Vic Fangio on there too, right?
Yeah, Vic and Dom Capers and almost a whole staff. Jim Merkenbeck for a long time, rest his soul. Almost a whole staff, really. But what I liked about playing for Jim was, first of all, he was great at getting you ready to play. Like, the great thing about Jim was that you knew that you were never going to be surprised by your opponent. And if that meant staying out there an extra hour and a half, then so be it. Because he did not buy into that, get them off the field, they're going to be tired. No, if you didn't do it, you didn't have to just do it. You had to do it correctly to get off the field with Jim. And there was countless times where we'd have a quote-unquote 2.5 hour practice, and then 2 hours into it, Jim would start the whole thing over again. Because, that's just the way he was. And he was a perfectionist. But at the same time, he was a fair guy, and he was fair to, I think he was fair to everybody. He just had an expectation, and if you failed to reach that expectation, he let you know about it.
Talk about that, too. It's a little off the USFL track, but you talk about 2.5 hour practices. Is it because players do not practice in training camp the way they used to, that it takes about 4 or 5 games during the NFL season to see some quality football? In your estimation as a former football player, do you think that's an accurate statement?
Well, to back up from that a little bit, I think what's happened, a lot of it is, and I think it's good, the less contact and training camp and all, I think that's good because I think it's going to extend guys' careers. Because, I came along at a time when, with Jim Moore and Marty Schottenheimer, guys like that, where you're practicing in training camp twice a day, 3 hours a day, twice a day for 4 weeks, nonstop without a break. That can't be good. But now, on the flip side of that, what happens is, because everything is so minimized, I think guys don't work on fundamentals anymore. Nobody can tackle anymore. Now, I'm not just some old guy saying that. Look at all these guys. You see all these guys getting hurdled. Looks like everybody's ducking their hair. Nobody wraps up. Everybody wants to get the ESPN shot now. So they don't wrap up. They go up and try to knock the crap out of the guy. So they either knock him down or the guy breaks it for 60 yards. Nobody wants to do fundamentals anymore. And then so what happens is, because everybody concentrates on, I think it's more scheme-oriented now because of the lack of physicality in terms of practices and so on. Everybody wants to practice scheme, and everything is imaginary. Tackling is imaginary. Everything's imaginary. So when you get into a live situation, it's like the first time you've actually done it live. And, it's like, in the military, they have live ammunition testing, practice, because they know you're going to react differently in a live situation than you are in a non-live situation. So I think a lot of it has gotten lost because everybody's talking about all the geniuses and the scheme guys and, the great defensive minds, offensive mind. All that's part of it, but you still got to do the fundamentals. And I think the teams that adhere to that best are teams that have the most success.
Talk about now going to Kansas City. Were you well received by your fellow NFL players, or did they kind of look at you like mockingly that you're a USFL has-been or something like that?
No, I don't think so. I think if you remember the second year of the league, that's when things really heated up. You had a lot of guys from the NFL that double dipped, that came over to our league and played and went back and vice versa. So, I don't think there's any question about, that they knew there were some good players there. I think at one time, I read that when it was all said and done, I think we had over 200 players that made active rosters in the NFL once the league flooded. So I don't think there's any question that, there were skilled players over there. And plus, a lot of us, they already knew about before we even went over there. I mean, guys, whether from college, like in my case, or guys that had been in the NFL and came over. So I didn't get that feeling anyway that was the attitude,
Tell me about the greatest defensive player you went against and the greatest teammate you had.
Greatest defensive player was, in my mind, was Leslie O'Neal from the Chargers. He was, to me,
he never gets talked about.
Well, he was, to me, before he got hurt, and unfortunately that's when I encountered him the first time. He was the most unbelievable combination of speed, power, explosiveness, size, attitude, effort. I've never seen anybody like him. And that's including he played against Reggie and so many other great players, and nothing against those guys. But to me, you talking about picking one guy, and every time I get asked this, I always say the same guy. To me, it was Leslie O'Neal.
Wow. Yeah, like I said, you never even hear about that. Tell me about Derek Thomas.
DT, great teammate. I know that a lot of things get said and heard about guys, but he's a guy that you want on your football team because you know that every single day he's going to give you 100% every single day. And he was a great guy. I loved him. He's a great teammate. I was sitting there watching him get 7 sacks against Seattle. Should have been 8. Mm-hmm. And, just a phenomenal talent. I mean, speed, quickness, size, power, you name it. And he could give it all to you. And, I think the thing that Derek didn't get credit for, because he was such a fun-loving guy, was that he was a smart guy in his approach to the game. Maybe it's not a word you hear associated with him a lot, but he was not a dumb guy. He was a smart guy when it came to his approach to the game, figuring guys out and looking at you and figuring out your weaknesses. And even in practice, he was trying to make you better and figure, you come out and say, "Hey, Irv, I got something for you today, man." But he was that's the way he was. He was always trying to get better, and it was such a tragic loss, when he lost his life. But phenomenal teammate.
Football's a dangerous game, and I just want to talk to you briefly about concussions and stuff. But I was at the game against Kansas City in 1992 when Dennis Byrd was injured, and I just remember it was a weird feeling sitting in the stands, quiet, and it wasn't a play that you think someone would get hurt on. What do you remember about that game?
Well, it's funny you should phrase it that way because that's exactly my thought was. I mean, you know how many times I've seen that play, where the two ends come together and they run into each other and one guy has his head down, there's no big deal. You see it 1,000 times during the course of a career. And I remember it very explicitly. And Dennis ran into Mercer, I believe it was.
Scott Mercer.
Yeah, and he had his head down. He hit Mercer's chest, and Dennis was a big, strong dude. Now you're not talking about some pencil neck guy, but I guess he hit it just the right way. And Dennis ran with such speed and effort that he probably was going 20 miles an hour, and he collapsed, and you could just see the way he fell that he wasn't going to. It was just weird. You don't see people fall and not catch themselves. But we were all hoping he was knocked out. We hope, okay, he hit his head, he knocked himself out, and he's unconscious. But then he laid out there, and it seemed like, I swear to God, it seemed like he was out there 3 days, and he just laid there, and nobody ever saw him move at all. But I don't think anybody ever thought about him being paralyzed, because you just don't think about that. And I remember him carrying him off, and he never moved. And after that, I remember, I think it was the second quarter, I think it happened, I believe. Nobody cared about the game after that. Nobody was really thinking about it. We went through the motions, but nobody was thinking about that. And I remember, a little story that I remember years later, Dennis, I can't remember what team I was with, but it was at training camp. I looked across the field, and I said, that looks like Dennis. Excuse me, that looks like Dennis. But I was like, this guy was walking toward me. I was like, that looks like Dennis, but that looks like Dennis Bird, but there's no way. Because the guy looked like a guy who was just walking with a limp, but he looked like Dennis Bird. And I didn't know that. I hadn't talked to Dennis in years. And I said, wow, that's Dennis Bird. It was the most amazing thing to see because he, like I said, I didn't know he was up walking again. And it was great to see. And, of course, his life ended tragically as well. But I think it was one of those things you never forget. It was like, I don't know, you never forget where you were and the moment, and you just, it's one of those things that's forever frozen in your mind.
If I could, one of my students is doing his documentary on concussions and player safety, and if you could share your thoughts on it as an offensive lineman. I remember talking to Dan Jiggets. He said playing football and playing offensive line is like getting in a mini car accident every day. Talk about your early days of training that you were, even when I was playing at way small levels, you're taught to lead with your head and put your head in there to tackle. Talk about player safety and what it was like when you were playing, and the marks that the NFL's trying to do to this day. But I think there's kind of a dark side of the NFL. They didn't want to really treat the players properly towards concussions. What are your thoughts about being retired all these years now and playing 30 years ago with head injuries and player safety?
Well, I think it's the most serious thing facing the league at this time. And I think finally it's good to see finally that that the league is actually acknowledging the existence of it. I know when I came into the league, all they had was see what you hit posters, in the locker room. Keep your head up. Not saying, well, it has anything to do with anything, but just keep your head up, so you don't get hurt. And honestly, people say, I hear people say, you guys knew what you were getting into. And you really don't. It's like saying, it's no different than like when you go buy a car. Well, they tell you, this car is great, it works, but sometimes the brakes don't work. Well, you can decide whether you want to take that chance or not, right? Because you have all the information. But if you don't have all the information, then you can't make that decision. Now, personally, I think 99% of the guys might have made the same decision. There are some guys that wouldn't have, to play if they had all the information that's available now and it's starting to come out. I just personally think, obviously, as a sport, it's impossible to make it safe, but you can make it safer. It's no different in boxing or anything. People are going to get hit. There's going to be concussion. People are going to die sometimes or whatever. But you want to make it as safe as possible. And I think until you start to acknowledge the things that are being pushed forward now with the concussions and the long-term brain damage and that type of thing, and then, like I said, avoiding more contact in practices and the headshots in games. I do think there's a proactive effort to eliminate some of the damage that's been caused by the game by people just ignoring the fact that that it even existed. So I think that's a good thing. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people have been sacrificed in the interim when there was information to the contrary. But I guess better late than never.
Did you ever play with the concussion?
I don't think so. Of course, at that time, you come off the sideline and the test was, where are we playing, what days, who are we playing, how many fingers. It was always 2 fingers anyway. You say that, then you're good to go. So there was certainly no, oh, he's out 2 weeks later, a concussion protocol. I mean, are you kidding?
What do you think of the new helmets? You think the new style of helmets, they kind of have the angles to absorb the blow and everything? Is that, do you think that really works? I mean, last coached 10 years ago, so you're still still with the modern times.
Right. Well, I don't think helmets help that much. I think the key is removing, minimizing blows to the head. And I think, again, like I said, the safest option is not to play the game. I don't see that as a real option. I think that, my son plays, he's in high school, he plays, and he can play as long as he wants to play. I think it would be disingenuous of me to say, oh, no, stay away from football. Are you kidding? I mean, that's what he wants to do. I mean, I hand him the keys to a car when he turned 16. That's much scarier than me. But at the same time, I do want him to be as safe as possible. I've always, from the time he first started playing, I always taught him, don't involve your head. Use your shoulders, don't involve your head if you can avoid it. And so I think that just the awareness of it now and teaching it differently now than I was taught when I was coming up, and like you said, like you were taught, I think that will help. Again, you're not going to remove it entirely. That's impossible. It's a violent contact sport, and people go to see that violence. But if you can remove the headshots and the blows to the head, particularly unnecessary blows to the head, where guys are targeting the head and all that, which I think they're making a great effort to do now, I think that will help.
Do you know any players that suffered from CTE or had suffered severely from concussions after their playing career?
Yeah, I do, and obviously I'm not going to call them by name, but yeah, I do, and some of them are friends of mine, and some are friends of mine that I knew that they're no longer here. It's a really, I think we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg in terms of understanding it, because you don't know what other factors come into play, so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot to still be understood about it, to be honest with you. And I'm glad to see that they're finally actually taking it seriously.
All right, we got so much. I can't thank you enough for all the time you gave me here, Irv. It's incredible. Anything that I missed at all that you think we need to touch on?
No, I think it sounds great. I appreciate the time. I appreciate you, kind of telling the story of, my favorite time of my career and a lot of guys, and, look forward to seeing more about it.
Okay, thank you. Do me a favor. Email me your address. I'll send you a copy of my book, and I'll let you know how we do with this. And thank you so much for your time here, Irv. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.